Hi, this is Kevin for Pixovert.com. In this video, we are going to look at how to create this 3D logo mock-up. I'm going to use it as sort of a template which you can put on whatever text or logo you want. So it's going to be editable, templatable. We're going to keep it nice and simple so everything's easy to edit and easy to reuse. The texture I'm using is 1200 by 800 approximately. It's a texture I got online. You can get these at sort of textures.com or any one of a number of thousands of websites which allow you to get textures. I'm going to keep things nice and simple, so we're just going to add some text, turn everything into a 3D workspace, and then it's going to be awesome. We'll start off by choosing the text tool. So I'm going to use Acumen Variable Concept Black at 300 points. The color doesn't matter too much. We're going to edit that anyway. So I'll type in some text and I'm going to go back to the second letter, well, to the second position. I'm going to type in Alt +3 on the numerical keyboard. That gives us a nice little symbol, and I'm going to edit this symbol using the character panel. So we'll go to Window, Character, and I just want the baseline not to be too as far down as it is. So I'm going to choose this guy here, and I'm just going to take that up, and you can see the shape is moving up a little bit. I'm going to increase the size of that shape so it's in proportion with the rest of the text. In fact, I'm going to make it a little bit larger because I want it to stand out. So we've given this a point size of 386. We'll accept that, and this is going to be my logo or my text. It's text and logo. So if you don't have the Alt 3 thing on your keyboard, if you haven't got the numerical keyboard, there's an ASCII code which I'm not sure right now what that is, but you could use a, just use a shape, a heart shape. There's a heart shape. If you go to the custom shape tool, there's a heart shape there, and you can mix in the shape with the text. I'll have a link to a video where I show you how you can mix shapes and text together, so I won't explain it in this video. We're just going to move this a little bit, and I think we're ready, so we'll go to the text, 3D, and new 3D extrusion from selected layer. It's going to ask me if I want to move to the 3D workspace, and I'm going to say yes. And we can see the text has now become 3D. The backdrop, exactly the same. We've now got the 3D workspace, so I'm going to go to the 3D panel and just hit 3D extrusion from selected layers and hit create. Oh, so it wants me to open up this document because there's a background, so I just need to click on that icon and then try again. And it works fine. You'll notice that the color of the background has changed. That's not a problem. We'll deal with that later. Before doing anything else, I'm now going to select these two items and I'm going to merge them down. Now, before doing that, I'm going to quickly explain that if you wanted to put something else in the scene, it's a good idea to put it in now. So in one of my attempts, I actually put some shapes. I put some shapes that look like this right at the back, just to create a kind of a bracket for the text to seem like it's hanging onto the wall. And if you want to do that, it's a good idea to do that before doing anything else, so that everything is then turned into a 3D extrusion. In fact, I think it's simple enough to do it, so let's just do it. It's simpler to do than to explain. So let's just create 3 of these. We'll make the video a little bit longer, but explaining it I think will take even longer. We'll just merge these shapes. I'm going to rename this layer bars, And I should have renamed this background layer wall. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. So we've got this 3D object here, which is called layer 0, and that's not very useful. So rename the layers before you turn them into 3D objects. Like I just did here, I called this layer bars. We're going to create a 3D extrusion. As you can see, it gives the layer the name of bars in the 3D panel, and that's just useful for identifying what you're working with. These three shapes are going to be like kind of a bracket that it's going to be holding the text to the wall. It's not necessary, but so let's select all these three and merge them. 3D, merge 3D layers. Okay, so everything's disappeared, but not a problem. We've got the text here. We've got the bars here. So at this stage, what I would recommend is to save the document so that if Photoshop crashes, you don't lose all the work you've done so far. So I'm just going to do that. So I've just saved the document. I'm going to keep on saving it just in case Photoshop crashes. We've got the text, and I've selected the text inside the 3D layer. You will notice that in the 3D layer, we've got the wall, which I've just renamed. We've got the text, and we've got the bars. The text has got a T next to it, which stands for text. Looks like a 3D text icon. The wall has got a shape icon, and the bars have got a shape icon. So the wall is being treated as a shape. We are going to move the text out by going to this icon, to this little widget, and when it's got move on Z axis, we're just going to pull that out like that, and that's awesome. We're going to go to the bars and pull those out as well, and you can see those come out, and we'll just place them so that they've got a little bit of a shadow next to the wall. Now, talking about shadows, let me explain to you what my settings are for this project. If we go to edit preferences, or just go to preferences in the Mac workspace, I'm going to use a shadow quality of low, and I'm going to use a quality threshold. Eventually it's going to go up to 4, but we'll start off with 1. And let's hit OK. It's going to make very quick renders. Now, this is the default view, and it's awesome. It allows us to work very easily seeing exactly what we're doing in the 3D perspective. But we want to change the perspective a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to do that a bit later on. But before we do that, let us work a little bit with materials. So we'll go to the wall. There's a thing called the layer 0 front inflation, which is really the wall front inflation. And that's basically the texture that you're seeing right there. I'm going to go and change it a little bit. I'm going to change the specular down to black. That gives us the original sort of color that we had. There's also a shine, which works with the specular. If I had the specular, say, at gray, the shine would definitely affect the specular. But we take the specular down to black. I'm not going to worry about the shine. And we'll keep everything else as it is. Sometimes Photoshop introduces an opacity mask, and you'll see a little icon like this icon down in the opacity. When it does that, you normally want to just click on that and just hit remove. I don't know why Photoshop does that, but we haven't got that here, so we don't need to worry. The rest of these are basically other sides. This is a 6-sided box, so we've got 6 materials. They all start off the same as this, and I'm not bothered to change them, except maybe we'll go in and hit remove texture, because we don't need the texture on the other parts of the wall, just on the front. I'm going to go to the text, and we'll work with the text by changing, first of all, the shape of the text. The text is a very deep extrusion, which is the length basically, and I want to reduce that just a touch to about 90 pixels. We'll go to the bars. I think the bars are okay. The bars are very large, but we're going to embed them inside the wall so that they just stick out of the wall a little bit. So I'm not going to bother too much about these. changing the extrusion for those. The materials, it's got a texture in the diffuse. We can remove that because we don't really need that. And then I'm going to choose the very dark color, because if I'm using these bars as sort of brackets to hold the text on, they'll usually be quite unobtrusive. We'll give it a specular, which gives it a kind of a shiny, sheeny color, or shiny, sheeny texture. For some reason, Photoshop doesn't want to keep all the surfaces selected, so I'm going to have to reselect these. We'll make sure the dark diffusion is there. We've got all 5 selected, and we're going to give those all the same kind of values. So I'm going to give them a shiny specular, gray, about 50% gray for the specular, very dark gray for the diffuse. We'll give it a reflection, make it a little bit metallic. Very high shine, actually. I'll give it about 80 shine. And you can see it's adding this kind of metallic sheen to the bars at the back there. We can turn off the text so we can see what's happening. You can see we've now got this sort of sheen. Let's go to the bevel and just add a little bevel here. And I'm going to choose the contour round. So I'm going to have a bevel of around 40%, an angle of 45, and the round contour. And we're done as far as the bars are concerned. Let's go to the text, switch that on, and let's move that back to the bars. Now, I need to have this kind of like touching on the bars, as though it's kind of like tooled onto the bars. It's kind of screwed onto the bars. I'm going to do a very quick test render, so I'm going to choose the marquee tool, and I'm just going to select an area that I want to see rendered, and I'm going to just quickly render that and see what that looks like. So we've got very low render settings, and you can see this is what it will look like after it's been rendered. Nice sheen on the bars there, they look very metallic. The material of the text needs to be worked on. We need also to make sure that the way that we've actually placed the text makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to go to the current view, going to click. We've got the default camera selected, so I'm going to click left. You can see that the text is kind of like sticking into the bars. So we'll click on the text, go to the move tool, just move this out a little bit so that the text is just touching onto the bars, and then it looks like it's being sort of screwed onto the bars. We'll go back to the current view, and I think we need default. Yeah, that looks good. We can now work with the text materials, and what I want to do is to give the text materials a really nice sheen, so they look a little bit metallic. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and choose all the materials from the front inflation to the back inflation. We'll give these again a pretty dark gray color for the diffusion. Specular again is going to be fairly bright. Make that maybe about a 54% gray. We'll take the shine up to around 40%, and the reflection is going to go up to about 50%. You can see that adds a nice sheen to the text. I might want to add a little bevel to the text as well, but I'm not sure, so I'll just try it first. And I'm working on the front bevel. I've given that a width of 7% and an angle of 45. We will then go to the front inflation. Again, I'm going to go to the third icon in the properties for the text. That's where the bevel is, and there's a thing called front inflation or just inflation, and that will allow us to work on the front, back, or front and back. I'm just going to work on the front, and I'm going to give this a little inflation, which just gives it that sort of puffy feel. Not too much, just want it to have a little bit of life. And maybe we'll take the angle down a little bit, so that looks kind of nice, doesn't it? We'll go with this. You can try different things. And I'm going to do another quick test render, and we'll see what this looks like. So this is the render button. That's the render complete. It's looking unusually cool. We're going to hit Ctrl D to get rid of the selection. I want to soften up the shadows, and I want also to work with the text a little bit. I want to change the shape of this heart. So we're going to go, and I'm going to show you how to edit this. If you wanted to use this as a template, you could save it, open it up. If you like the way that it looked right now, you could save it as a template. And to save it as a template, just file, save as. Instead of saving as PSD, as a .psd file, just change it to .psdt, and that creates a template. You can open that and it will open up as a new instance rather than allow you to edit that particular document. It will open up as a completely new document with all the same features. So what we will do is go to the text and edit source in the properties panel, choosing the first icon, edit source, and we can go ahead and just work with this a little bit. I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. I'm actually going to bring it down again, so we go to the character panel and just, I think we need to shift it down just a touch, like that, more or less back to where it was when I first began. Let's save that and close that. You can see the text is now shifted down just a little bit. I want to change the view, so I'm going to go to, no, we'll work on the lights first of all. So what I've done is to set up some lights that we can use to light this image. And let's see if I can get some other, yeah, these will do. We've got 3 lights. Let's go to the move tool. This first light is an 80%, well, let me give you the color. It's 45 for the hue, 26 for the saturation, 100 for the brightness. It's an infinite light, and to set up an infinite light, just go down to this icon, choose infinite light, and it will give you all these settings in the properties. Here we've got the infinite light with its color that we've selected, an intensity of 80%, and a shadow of around 5%, shadow softness of 5%. The shadow value is ticked, and I'm going to angle that to the top and left. We'll go to the second light. So I created a second infinite light. We've got 3 infinite lights altogether and 1 point light. The infinite light is, second infinite light has a color of 223, a hue of 223, saturation of 49, brightness of 80, and I've given it an intensity of 45 and a shadow softness of 100%. And I'm just going to drag this so that it's coming from about there. So you can see that blue light just coming and giving us a bit of a soft shadow over here. The infinite light, the third infinite light, is another yellow, 56 for the hue, 17 for the saturation, brightness is 100, and this one, I'm not so sure about. Maybe it's going to come from this direction. I'm going to just take down the intensity to around 46, and the softness is going to be about 40%. And this setup will just help us to make slightly more complex shadows. Let's do a test render and see what this looks like. You can see the light is a bit more intense, which is cool. I'm going to take the third infinite light and I'm going to reduce the intensity down to about 33%. The shadow is going to remain very soft, and I'm going to go to the first light and just increase the softness. It's going to be a cloudy little day. Well, it's partly cloudy. The softness is going to go up to 15%. The point light, let's see what's going on with that. Let's go to the move tool. Okay, I don't think we need a point light. This makes it look... It looks cool, but I don't think we need it. What do you think? Do you think we need the point light there? It's kind of mixing day with night. I'm going to delete the point light. We don't need that. Now, if you want to save the lights that you set up, I suggest you experiment with different light setups. You can go to the light and then choose custom and then save, and it will give you a dialog that allows you to save, and you can see the lights that you saved down in this custom area. So that's really cool. I like the way it's looking. There was another design that I did where, let me just go to the scene, current view, and we'll use the orbit tool. There was another design that I did where I put some rods holding the text to the brackets, and it produced some really nice shadows. But in this case, I think it's a bit too complex to attempt this time, so we'll leave the rods out. But those were just more shapes that I created. And if you do use rods if you do use something like that, the rods have to be aligned with the letters. It just makes it very hard to use it as a template. So I'm going to go to the current view. We'll choose default camera. I think the default view hasn't changed. Okay, so we've got the original view, and I want to change the view a little bit. This is looking good. If we do a test render, it comes out fine. We could use this as a kind of a template because we're getting a nice feel to it. I think that looks good. But I just want to show you how to play around with perspective. And I think also we can change the angle so that we can see the reflections a little bit better. I'm going to go to the text. I'm going to choose the extrusion. And what I want to do is to increase, I want to bump up the reflection, maybe turn down the shine a little bit, and just increase the specular so it's a little bit brighter. I want to really catch the brick reflecting in that extrusion, because I think that's going to really make it work as a 3D design. What do we do now? Just going to save it just in case it crashes. Let's work on the angle. Let's work on the view. So if I take the orbit tool in the current view, I can see that the wall looks cool, but it's a very small wall. And I find I prefer working with small textures in Photoshop, because Photoshop does not like large textures. I want either this kind of view or I want this kind of view. So we'll have to work a little bit to make sure that the texture is filling the entire image. Let's do a very quick test render. Let's do a complete test render and see what this looks like. You can see we've got those nice reflections happening in the extrusion area. In this area here, we can see the brickwork being reflected. Maybe it's a bit too intense, but we'll keep it. Okay, I like the look of that. I'm going to escape to stop the render, and we'll go and look at it from underneath and see what that looks like. So once again, we'll do a test render, and I'll come back once it's done. So this is the render after about a minute. It's looking cool, and I want to just bring the camera a little bit more. I want to move into the scene. So we'll go to the camera, move tool, and if I click on the camera icon there, we've got an FOV of 40, and I think we can reduce that a little bit. And then we can go to this icon, and I think if we just pull down, this entire image will expand to fill the little viewport that we've got there. And I'm going to use this tool to move down. And you know what? If I move this, no, I don't want to do that. If I shrink this secondary window, you can see that we're covering the entire viewport with the texture of the wall. If I were to do a quick render now, it would be exactly the same as it was before. So what I would do at this stage is to go to Edit, Preferences, 3D, and change the quality threshold 4. and then we could do a render which will be much higher quality. If you are feeling lucky, you could change it to 5, but I honestly would test it at 4, which would take about 4, 5, 6 minutes. And if that looked good, then test it at 5. And definitely test it at about this size, at a fairly small size first, before, if you wanted to try to test it at a larger size, going to image size, and then resizing it. 1280 800 takes about 3 or 4 minutes to render at the setting of 4. If you wanted to make it larger, it will take about, if you double the size of everything, it will take about 4 times as long to render. Let's go ahead and look again at the text. You can still go in, you can edit the text, you can change this to something completely new. What I want to do actually is to do something that I'm going to ask you not to do when you do your own projects. At this stage, if I save the file, especially if I save it as a template, I can reuse it as many times as I want. But the next step I'm going to do is something that you might want to do, and I'm going to recommend you don't do it. Let me show you what that is. Let's go ahead and choose this text. Let's go to 3D and let's choose split extrusion. This will create, you get a little warning sign there, or information box. This takes all the items inside the text and produces settings for every single one of them. It produces materials, different materials for every single one of them. This increases the file size, increases render time, increases the likelihood of Photoshop crashing, but it allows us to do something really cool. Let's go ahead and let's select the heart shape, and let's go and choose the front inflation, choose diffuse. I'm going to make that a red, really rich red color. Specular is going to go down a little bit darker. The reflection I'm going to increase, and the shine I'm going to increase quite a lot. We'll make the red a little bit darker, so hue of 0, saturation is going to be very high, brightness about 50%. That gives us a really bright looking heart shape. As you can see, the text now is separated into little tiny, we can move each of the letters around, which is really cool. But if we go here and look at the properties for the edit source, you can no longer edit the source. So this is how I'm going to render it. But if you wanted to use it as a template, you would have to go back a couple of steps, go back to the point where we actually had it as before the split extrusion, and then save it like that. Then you could still go in and, oops, I didn't want to do that. I definitely didn't want to do that. You could then go in and still have the opportunity to edit the source. So the other thing I wanted to show you, because I clicked on I clicked on the camera, which changed the view, the entire history has changed. I've lost all the edits that I did. So I'm going to redo those edits. I'm going to stop the video, redo the edits to split the extrusion and change the texture. And again, this is something to bear in mind. Every single time you move the camera, change a texture, it is recorded in the history. So every few edits, the entire history will be replaced by whatever edits you do inside the 3D workspace. Let me go ahead and just redo the edits that I did. Okay, I've redone the edit, and what I'm going to show you is that if we come up to the environment, I haven't done the render yet, but if we come to the environment and just spin this little ball around, we've got the default texture at an intensity of 114, the shadow is at a softness of 100. And if we move this little texture here, which is the default texture, you can see that we can get some really interesting specular highlights happening on the text. And that's something to do before you do your final render. So I'm going to do the final render now and come back to you. Right, so Photoshop is just finishing off the render. It's taken about 6 minutes in total, so a little bit longer than I thought. And this is what it looks like towards the end. It's about 11 seconds to go. So this is basically it. One thing I'm going to show you finally is that you can go ahead and stamp the image to a new layer. Control Alt Shift and E, just create the new layer icon, stamp this, and then you could maybe go back and try other edits. So that's basically it. I mean, I think it should take about 5-6 minutes to put together, and maybe about 6-7 minutes to render. If I wanted to get an even better render, I could go ahead and change the settings to number 5, and that will take maybe about 10-15 minutes to render, but I don't think it's really worth it for this particular edit. So that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time. Bye.